The world of football was dramatically shocked on September 22nd. Manchester City and Spain national team midfield star Rodri fell to the ground in a clash against Premier League rivals Arsenal. Days later, Man City's doctors claimed that Rodri's season was over, only a few weeks after its start. The Spaniard sustained an anterior cruciate ligament injury. The ACL is supposed to be one of the worst enemies a football player can find on his way. The end of a season, the doubts created forever about the injured knee, the progression, the momentum that can be cut over and be gone forever. But I think many think that the real problem for Rodri, for many, is not the ACL. It's not any other particular injury. It's something bigger that lies behind them. The real problem is the overstuffed calendar, the burnout, the game overload, the current competition system in the world of football. But there is a possibility to fix this problem, and the system has to act now. Let's get down to the facts. Let's get down to Rodri's game calendar, ever since he was traded to Man City in the summer of 2019. From that moment until the end of last season, Rodri played the astonishing number of 260 games with Man City. If we add up the 50 games with the Spanish national team during that period, it makes a total of 310 games in 5 seasons, an average of 62 games a year during a 5-year span. Meanwhile, the FIFA Pro research has said that 55 games is the upper limit of the number of intensive games a player can play in a year. So Rodri has been playing over the limit for half a decade. After taking all these numbers into account, the question should be, how is it possible that Rodri wasn't severely injured before? However, even cases like Rodri's are becoming more and more common. The football calendar system hasn't changed for the better during the last years. It rather has changed for the worse, with more increase in the best competitions. The Champions League has 64 more games this year than its previous edition. The Club World Cup has gone from 8 to 64 matches. With the national squads competitions like the World Cup, the Continental Tournaments, and new brand competitions like the Nations League, that is also making dramatic changes in the players' careers. Jude Bellingham played 251 games in his career before turning 21. English young star of the 90s David Beckham, he played only 54 games before turning 21. And the situation is even worse for those South American footballers playing overseas, cases where you have to add up transoceanic trips for every national squad competition window. The situation seems unstoppable because the economic profits are driving every decision-making in the world of sports. This increase in games is created by competitions, sponsors, and teams seeking more money, more benefits, and more lucrative contracts. The increase is created by an economic system that always wants more and more and more. An economic system that also rules in competitions like the NBA, where the organization doesn't want its players to rest in any of their 82 regular season games, even though the competition is becoming faster, tougher, and more tense every year. The system will always want more and more games. So what is the solution? In my opinion, the solution before a player strike comes out of this overload is to establish a cap on the number of games every footballer can play in a year. This cap would only affect teams that play in European competitions, and it would be their domestic games, those which would be capped. For example, if Man City made it to the Champions League, Rodri would only be allowed to play 30 games in the Premier League. If we add this restriction to other domestic club competitions, Rodri could only play 4 of potential 6 games in the FA Cup, plus 2 of the 4 games in the Carabao Cup. The potential benefits of this cap would not only affect players' health, but also competitiveness in domestic tournaments. Let's say that Wolves are currently fighting relegation from the Premier League, and a star player of their team is Cunha. And now they must play Man City. Well, Wolves will still be able to call upon Cunha, but maybe the citizens have to rest Haaland and make other rotations in the team, so Wolves would have a bigger chance of winning that game. Also, when it comes to tournaments like the FA Cup or the Carabao Cup, small clubs that don't play European competitions would have a bigger chance to get to their final stages. This would end with the boredom. Maybe we could see how the trend of only Premier League teams winning the FA Cup ends after almost half a century. Of course, there is doubts about the system. Should the cap affect also Champions League games? What about the national teams? Money can overcome almost everything, and this trend could end up in bigger teams buying even more players from smaller teams in order to have enough players to play in their different competitions and avoid the effect of caps. For instances, basketball powerhouses like CSKA Moscow have ended up creating pretty much 2 squads for facing their different competitions, one for domestic games and a better one for the EuroLeague. And this would devaluate domestic competitions even more. Answers are complicated, but doubts are real. There are too many games in the world of European football. There are too many games that are making us lose players like Rodri. The one I've proposed here is just that, a proposal. There could be many more. But the thing we have to achieve is one. Stop that economic greed from competitions makes us lose forever the players we love the most on the football pitch. This is maybe the most important football game of the century, and I hope we're going to win it.